through Hook, when she invited me, got me to the job as the acting coach on Hook.
And believe me, the Lost Boys needed a lot of help. I was like, ah! I'm glad I had girls.
And so from doing that, you put Spielberg on your resume, everyone's like, you know, so from doing that, then there was another friend who was the AD on, which is assistant director on Sister Sister. And so he remembered that I had worked with kids in Hook, on Hook. And so I got the call, and then I went in and I did, I think, 4 or 5 seasons on Sister Sister, with a couple of little bit parts here and there. And then I got the call from Carla about Gilmore Girls to go in and interview. And so I went in and I interviewed first with Amy and Patricia, who was the line producer on the show. And then after I got past that interview, then I interviewed with Lauren. And I think I was one of 4 people.
Lauren Graham.
Yeah, Lauren Graham. And so I was one of 4. And of course, in the interview with Lauren said, "So now you're good friends with Carla, right?" I said, "Yes." Yes. "Oh, yes." So I got the job.
That's great. And so, do most TV shows and films have dialogue coaches?
No.
So what do you think, you joked that the script supervisor kept getting fired, but what do you think it was about Gilmore Girls that required that kind of work?
Well, not to be confused with a dialect coach, because a lot of people think dialogue coach is a dialect. Dialect is like if you want to speak with a Southern accent or a New England accent, or, you know, from Texas, that's a dialect. Dialogue is, I'm the keeper of the word. That means that every line has to be, every word has to be said exactly as written. Usually shows that have kids, or maybe some series that might have a stand-up comic or a non-actor who's in an acting role, they may need a little extra help. But on Gilmore Girls, Amy and Dan, they wanted to hear, when they wrote the dialogue, they heard it a certain way. They wanted specifically said the way they had written it. And so I had to crack the whip and go out there and get the actors correct.
And if I may say, that's why we kept firing people, because actors, you know, we got the scripts late usually, and you know how much dialogue there is, and they're talking rapid fire. And so it's, you know, really intense concentration and for the actors. And so when someone comes up and says, excuse me, you didn't, whatever, if they didn't have a certain way about them and how to do that, didn't go over so well sometimes.
Yeah.
So I knew that George would be fabulous in that. And actually later in the series, he wanted some time off, and you know, was thinking about having someone come in to relieve him like one day or something. And my daughter goes, "I could do that, I'd like to do that." And I said, "Honey, I think they'll eat you alive." But she came in and she has a winning personality like George did, and they really liked her too. But George is the supreme. I've written a book that actually I'll be signing tomorrow called Grandma Told Me So, about a lot of the films and shows, and it's about relationship, but it's a good book. It's really fun. And I even have George in it as an example of the perfect friend who everybody loves, so he's good at that.
I'm learning that Gilmore Girls really is all about family. It's very sweet. But that leads me to my next question is, how did you advise the actors to kind of keep up with the pace? What did your day-to-day look like on set?
Well, I was there from the first word spoken to the last word spoken. I was there for all the actors, and I would run lines with them to get them prepared for the scene if they wanted to run lines. Then when we were actually shooting the scene, I had headphones on in my script, and I'm following every word, and I had my own kind of, I don't know, shorthand to kind of, for the corrections. And what I had to do was more work, but as an actor, I understood what the actors were going through. So quite often, you go up and you give a correction to an actor, and they're like, they think they're saying the line correctly. And so the first response is, well, what did I say? you know, so what I ended up doing is trying to write what they said incorrectly. And then I said, well, you said such and such and such and such. And they go, oh, and then they can make the correction. Now, some of the actors, I wouldn't tell them what they said incorrectly because it would just confuse them even more. So, and after a while, you know how each actor works. So certain actors, I could give them the correction or tell them what they said incorrectly, and then they'd make the adjustment. Other actors, I said, don't worry about it, just say that this is how you're supposed to say it. And, you know, and all the actors, I mean, they, various levels of proficiency in learning the lines.
Who nailed the dialogue the quickest?
Lauren.
Lauren's really smart.
Yeah, Lauren is like a robot. I don't think there would be many actresses today that could have done Lorelai to be able to absorb that much dialogue. I mean, literally, there were times they were given the script right there when we were getting ready to shoot. And then she's looking at it, and I'm like, are you kidding me? You know,
Although sometimes we did have little cheat sheets around behind the milk carton at the table. I don't know if you saw any.
Yeah, in fact, a little inside, when Rory's at Yale and she's sitting at the computer, good portion of the time there might be a little cheat sheet on the computer screen. So it's just kind of looking intensely, like going.
How about on the back of like Luke's Diner menus?
Oh yeah, I mean, actors, you tend to you find places. I know that one of my friends worked on ER, and George Clooney had little post-it things all over the set for his lines. So a lot of times you see George Clooney kind of looking down, like, do you think that's his acting style? No, he's looking at his lines.
Actors are people too. I feel like that's how I used to cheat on tests when I was in middle school. I never cheated on tests.
Her mom's here, she had to tell her.
I know, I didn't cheat on tests, no. But Carla, so similarly, do you mind walking us through, I know you had a number of really unique roles on set, but you started as assistant director. So what would your day-to-day kind of look like, obviously depending on the episode, but...
An assistant director, anyone will tell you, is the most difficult job. I kid you not. George is there from the beginning of the time, and his is long hours as well. As he said, from when an actor speaks to the last actor who speaks. I'm the first person there and the last person there, like always. And on Gilmore Girls especially, we had many 18-hour days or 20-hour days. Or I mean, it was a lot of work, because the show. And I love this show. Every time I got a script, I would be like, wow, this is good. And that doesn't always happen. And there was always some huge factor in the script, be it a dance marathon or a debutante ball or there's always something, the festival or whatever. So it's not really necessarily in my job description to take these giant things on, but I found myself because to hire all those dancers would have been just too expensive for our budget, that I would go, and swing dance was very popular at the time, and go to clubs and interview people and hire them, or the debutante ball, go to debutante balls and find out about everything, or the Bracebridge dinner, go to find out all about that as well. But generally, you're in charge. It's sort of like you're in charge of a three-ring circus, because you're responsible for everything. The wardrobe person is about wardrobe, hair is about hair, lighting's about lighting, but you have to make sure everything is happening. And you start out first by getting a script, and on television you have 1 week where you prep as an assistant director. As a production manager, you do all of them. But 1 week where you prep and 1 week where you shoot. So the first week is basically reading the script, and it was hard because, as I said, we didn't usually get the scripts a lot, so you might be doing it all the night before, but and while you're shooting. But you break down the script, and by breaking down the script, it means to each scene, you schedule what you're shooting, where you're shooting it, how you're shooting it, and who's in it, and many times actors. It wasn't so bad on Gilmore, although because Ed and Callie lived on the East Coast and other actors might not be available, or Lauren had to get out to go do this, or Alexis for something else. So you have to coordinate all those elements, and when they're available, make sure that all works. and also try to keep in mind to what could be done in a day as well. So you're really trying to foresee everything and anything that can happen when something, you know, like I think the incident with Warner Brothers that the movies didn't show. I said, they're the people that are running this, Jenny and her husband, they'd be really good ADs, I think. Because there's just so much to coordinate. And also you direct all the background, everything that that's happening, all the extras, what they're doing, and so it's a pretty big job. So the first week, as I said, you're there prepping and getting everything together and organizing, and then when you're shooting, you say rolling a lot, and ready, get the actors, and just to try to keep everything moving, everything coordinated. If there's effects, if there's, you know, we're having snow here, how are we gonna do that? I mean, I rewatched because I realized I started this show in 2000, so am I gonna remember some of this stuff? So I rewatched a couple shows, and delightfully so. And one I watched was they shoot Gilmore's, don't they? Because I thought they were gonna screen that here. And there's so much work involved, and it looked wonderful, and I love the show, but I'm like, wow, there's so much work that happened to make this happen.
And Carla, you worked on so many important episodes, one of which you mentioned is, I believe, season 2, when Rory has her debutante ball and her coming out to society, which Emily Gilmore is so thrilled about. What do you remember about making that episode? Do you remember anything about it?
Yeah, I do remember, you know, filming with all these beautiful young ladies, and as I said, I live in Malibu, so it's not a big, like more on the east side of LA, like Pasadena and the older communities, they're more into that, but there are a few people that are into the debutante thing in Malibu.